Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. I am Elizabeth Townsend Guard. I'm a law professor. I do all kinds of things, including copyright and trademarks. I also really just want to quilt. Today's episode is I'm really excited about. This is our 2023 season, and today we have Brendon Butler with us from University of Virginia. Brendon is a rock star when it comes to library and fair use, and now has opened a firm with another rock star, Peter Yazzie, who is they have a firm that focuses on fair use. We talked to him about what is fair use and what he's been up to. And then in the end, he's super nice and says some super complimentary things. We'll talk about that after he says them. So I live on a street that has a lot of construction, the street itself. And this construction started after we started the interview. I'm hoping it doesn't pick up, but if you do hear it, I try to mute as much as I possibly can, but you might hear construction when I'm speaking, and I apologize. This season, we really are talking a lot about copyright. We're also going to be talking about trademark as well. So this is part of our sort of more in-depth series of sort of what role does copyright play. And for those of you who are wondering what you can do with patterns when you're in a shop, he talks about that too. It's towards the very end. So let's start the interview and let's talk to Brendon. Brendon is awesome.
So I'm Brendon Butler, and I am calling in from Charlottesville, Virginia, in beautiful Central Virginia.
Nice. And what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
Ooh, boy. Let's see. We had, when I was a kid, almost all of the blankets we had were sort of homemade blankets by grandmas and aunts, and so I don't think I knew you could get blankets at the store.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's quite lovely.
Yeah.
Do you still have any of them, or have they kind of disintegrated
Oh,
over time?
No, they're around, and in fact, I got two really nice sort of family heirloom. I mean, they're not precious. I mean, we use them, but sort of quilts that my great grandmother made just recently from my dad, and we're there. My kids use them every day.
Oh, I love that. I really like that. I like not precious because you like sleeping under something of your grandmother's or great grandmother's or aunts is really something special about that. So, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree completely. And when my daughter was born, and she's my first child. A friend of ours made a lovely little, kind of childish quilt for her, and that's one of those things you put it in a box somewhere and hold on to it, and she'll give it to her kids.
I like that. All right, well, we're here to talk about fair use. So let's go back just a bit. So if we talk about copyright and fair use as part of the podcast, usually towards the end, but today we're going to focus all on that. Let's start a little bit about, back up a little bit. Tell me sort of, I'm sure you didn't dream of being a fair use expert when you were 7. So how did we get here? How did we get to this being really a focus of what you do?
That's a great question. I did always, like a lot of people who end up being, in the legal profession, I did always enjoy, arguing with people and being, making policy arguments and all that. So I knew I wanted to kind of go to law school. I was pretty sure that, or be some kind of philosophy professor or something. And I ended up in law school, and then I knew I was interested in the law of expression, and at first it was the First Amendment, and I wanted to be I want to be a media lawyer, whatever that is, that's what I want to do. And I wandered my way into being really focused on fair use because my wife is a librarian, and we've known each other since high school. And I was hanging out with when I was in graduate school in philosophy for my abandoned philosophy career. She was in graduate school for library stuff and learning how to conserve books. And I was around librarians a lot, and I sort of imbibed the librarian's interest in copyright through osmosis.
I love
And
that.
then very early in my career, well, I started off as a lawyer during the financial crisis of 2008. And so, like a lot of people who started off in that year, I had this very bizarre experience of going to a law firm and getting what I thought was the dream job, and then there wasn't any work, right? And the law firms were freaking out and figuring out, we can't mass fire people because that would scare away the next year's crop of fresh law student blood and all this stuff. So anyway, I found myself basically being offered up by my law firm to various nonprofits.
Oh, I like that.
Like, yeah, I was like, hey, can we ship this
Yep.
young attorney over to you guys and he'll help you out with whatever media, copyright,
Yeah.
whatever. And on the menu of nonprofits was the Association of Research Libraries.
Oh, love it. Super love it.
Yeah,
Hold on just a second. The dogs are going insane. I don't want it to be on the recording. So let me just pause for a second and throw them in a bedroom because
of course.
I'm sure there's a cat passing by, but I don't want it to be on the recording because that's all they protect us from are stray cats, which is
Yes,
really annoying, but that's
yes,
okay. Hold on just a second and I'll be
no
right
problem.
back. Let me pause the recording.
Recording stopped.
Okay. We'll be right back. I thought they were put away. Oh my goodness. Rocky, Jasmine, you're being too noisy. Come here. What's going on with you guys? Come on, let's go upstairs. Upstairs, upstairs. Come on, up you go. Okay. Ridiculousness. Okay.
Recording in progress.
So, you're being farmed out to nonprofits. How did you feel about
Yeah.
that? How was that work different than the work you would have been doing at a law firm?
Oh, it was infinitely more interesting and better in every way. So I was never a natural law firm creature, probably, and I'm sure that's part of why I was on the short list to be farmed out. They could see how unnatural it was for me to work essentially, honestly, to work on mergers and acquisitions that just happened to involve copyrights. That was the kind of work I was doing, and there were a few fun little things that came up in the law firm context, but by and large, it was corporate law with a little bit of media thrown in, and I was
Interesting.
getting really jaded and bored and not happy. So
Okay.
moving over to the library nonprofit world was amazing.
Right.
It was
So,
amazing.
right. So you got farmed out to a library organization, the library organization in some way, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
And
it
what were you
is.
doing there?
Well, it was the shortest way to put it is I was essentially a lobbyist for big library,
So
right?
cool.
Right. Like if the oil companies have or pharmaceutical companies have pharma and they have an office in DC and their job is to keep an eye on all the issues that are relevant to big pharma.
Yeah.
ARL is just that for libraries, but since libraries are good, and what they want is, good and right and true, being a lobbyist for them has a little bit of an easier, it's easier to sleep at night when that's what you do.
So what does your day look like if you're a lobbyist for libraries?
So your day is interesting. And I'd say lobbying was actually, that was sort of, half the job. And then the other half was sort of what you might call like advocacy lawyering. So like writing amicus briefs and writing kind of like filings and administrative proceedings. That's where I think you and I probably first
Yeah.
encountered each
Right.
other was there would be, the Copyright Office would have some inquiry into
Right.
whether the Copyright Act should be changed in
Right.
a certain
A
way.
call
And
for
it's not exactly
comments.
lobbying.
Right.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
would
it
ask
is
for
because you get
comments. They would
so
have a little meeting.
exactly. So the Copyright Office, when they do things, they put out a call for comments to the public, and then anyone who wants to can respond. and
Yes.
like very important groups do it. Anonymous people, regular people, all comment on whether they should change things or add a rule or something like that. And so it's very exciting and kind of thrilling because you're engaged in this conversation, and then often they have roundtables and invite people to talk about it, and then they put out a report or they change the law or whatever they're doing. So that was part of your job, which
Yeah.
is great.
That was a big part of it, which was really fun. And this was a time, this was around 2008, 9,
Yeah.
10, when the dominant kind of copyright narrative was about big tech versus traditional content, right? And so it was this question of whether and how the internet was going to grow and people on the internet were going to coexist with a copyright system that was written, for books
Right.
that were printed on paper. And
Very
libraries were very
uncertain.
interestingly positioned there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very uncertain, confusing times. Like people were worried about lots of things. So what kind of things did you work on during that period of time? What was the kind of subject matter focus that you yeah, was that during like the pre-72 sound recording stuff and Orphan Works was still going? Was that all of that stuff? Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
And also, and a lot of that, well, not pre 72, but the Orphan Works, a lot of that spun off of the Google Books project.
Right.
And
so for
I
people
had,
listening, the Google Books project became a big deal in the copyright world because Google took in and digitized like everything without asking permission from anyone. And the question, and then, if I remember, were you at, I remember this was such an amazing moment when they were like, oh, and they said, and they brought the libraries in, right? Like the libraries
Yep.
were like, come and digitize our works.
Absolutely.
And they were getting sued for fair use, and they were claiming fair use.
Yes.
And then suddenly they were like, oh, and by the way, we're going to monetize it too, right? They're going to do print on demand. And it seemed like that was the moment with that people got really upset. Like the authors were upset, like some of the authors were upset, but everyone was on board. But then it was like, wait, what? Like there was a sense of, is that what your recollection of kind of?
Well, it's an interesting question. I guess but some of that may have unfolded before I came along.
Got it.
But my sense was, and once people decided they didn't like this thing, they probably retroactively decided they hated it all along. But by the time I came along, there was the people on the Authors Guild hardcore author rights side, the people who ended up actually suing.
Yeah.
They thought that Google should not have the right to do anything.
Right.
They didn't say like, well, you can make a search engine, but you can't monetize it. They said, burn the search engine, burn the copies.
That was right. And so that was a huge moment for fair use as well, of kind of how far can fair use go. And Google there was an exciting, exhilarating time. James Grilman had a big conference, and like there was just a lot going on, and it was very exciting. And I remember we were summoned to Google to talk about duration one time because they were trying to figure out if they should do that. And it was like, I don't know, it was just a very like moment of like, what is this thing going to be? What is Google going to be? What is the internet going to be? What is the role of books? What's the role of libraries? It was very, very vibrant and very exciting. That's all sort of settled now, right? Like we're in the kind of But tell me how you got from doing nonprofit at the law firm to where you are now, and tell us where you are now.
Yeah, so it's a fairly natural evolution. So the law firm helped me transition over to working in the nonprofit, right? And fair use is sort of the sine qua non of copyright for libraries, right? Like if there was no fair use, there could be hardly any library activity other than, I suppose, sort of buying and lending, right? Which is not nothing. But, the minute somebody says, I'd like to digitize this or copy it or anything, fair use comes into play. So I had to quickly give myself a deeper crash course on fair use as part of my work for the libraries. And then that kind of sent me down this path of being really focused on fair use in my life. So after I worked with the libraries for about